In this video, we will be discussing loop constructs. Loops provide a way to iterate a specified number of times or over a container of items. There are three types of loops that we will cover: the for loop, the while loop, and the do while loop. The first loop we're going to cover is the for loop. To use a for loop, we're going to need two integer variables. I'll go ahead and create those now. First one will be I, and the second one will be count, and I'll initialize count to 10. I'll start the construct. So we do for with an opening brace. You don't have to have a space there. I'm just doing it for readability. And I'm going to set I equal to 0. That's going to initialize our I. That will set the value of where we're going to begin inside of our loop. The next statement, and there's three statements inside of here. Each one is separated by a semicolon. So the first one is the initializing area. The second one is the testing area. So here I'm going to say if I is less than or equal to count. I'm going to end that statement. And in the third statement, this is where we increment the variable. In this example, I'm going to increment it by 1. And there's a shorthand for that. I can use ++i. I'll close off the parens. ++i is a shorthand for I equals I plus 1. It does the exact same thing. And the next thing is to insert some curly braces. So anything inside of the curly braces will get executed each time during the loop. We're going to just insert a log statement. And I'll say the count is, I'll use the %d specifier. And I'm going to give it the I variable. So if we go back over this, exactly what's going to happen, it'll come in and it'll set I equal to 0. That's the first thing that'll happen. We're going to initialize that variable. Then we're going to say our initial number that we're going to start with is 0. The next thing it's going to do is perform the test. It'll say, is I less than or equal to count? Well, the count is 10, I is 0, so yes it is. This means it's going to come down into the code, go ahead and run whatever code that we have in here, execute that. Then it's going to come over, it's going to increment I by 1, and it's going to come back then and do the test again. So now I equals 1, and it'll say, is 1 less than or equal to 10? That statement is still true. It'll come back, execute the code again. It'll come over, increment the variable. It'll go do the test again, come back down, execute the code. You see, it just makes a triangle there. It'll continue doing this until the test is false. Once the test is false, it does not execute the code and jumps out of the for loop and continues on with your program. So let's go ahead and run this with Command R. And we can see that we have the count as 0 all the way through 10. And that's exactly what we expected to get. In this example, we're going to cover the while loop. Now, the first thing we'll have to do, we can't have I not initialized to begin with for this example. So I'm going to say I equals 0. I'm going to come down, I'm going to type while. I'm going to use the same condition. I'm going to say I less than or equal to count. And then we're going to perform the statement. And we'll use the same log statement. So I'll say the count is, we'll use the %d specifier, and we'll substitute the I variable. Now, if you haven't noticed, I've created an infinite while loop here. And what does that mean? Well, the test is continue while I is less than or equal to count. Now, in the for loop, each time through the loop, I would get incremented by 1. Therefore, the test would eventually be false and exit out of the loop. The while loop doesn't provide that for us in its construct. Because here, I is never going to change. I will always be less than 10. So this will just continue logging to the console, and it won't stop until we either hit the stop button in Xcode, or if we were in the terminal, you could use Control-C to stop it. So the way we get around that is we add in the incrementer inside the while loop. So here, I'll put ++i. So now each time through the loop, it'll check, is I less than or equal to count? It'll execute the code, and then it'll increment I by 1. Then it'll go back up again, and it'll do the same thing until the test is false. So when we run this, we're going to get the same results we did with the for loop. And just as we expected, we have the count as 0 all the way to 10.